Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Six Sided Podcast. Again, I'm your host, the Taxman. Before I kick this show off this week, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who tuned in to last week's episode, who followed us on Twitter, retweeted, liked everything, checked us out on SoundCloud, checked us out on YouTube. Honestly, the response is way more than I thought it would be. I would have been happy with 5 people checking us out, and it was exponentially more than that. So a big thank you to everybody. Like I said, those who retweeted, those who passed it along. Honestly, I couldn't be happier with how everything went with the first episode, because I can't thank everybody who retweeted and followed me on Twitter, just because honestly it was so many. I do want to give a quick shout out to those who subscribe to us on YouTube, and that would be Andre Corbeil, Audibus Maximus, Mike Larkin, I'm going to butcher this one, so I apologize, Krenigma, the Heel Team 6, and the Impact Lounge. So thank you all for subscribing to us on YouTube. I'm going to make this a point every week. Anybody who subscribes to us on YouTube, I'm going to go out of my way to at least thank those ones. Like I said, there's been so many on Twitter with so many handles that I would probably, spend 50 minutes just thanking them. So thanks very much. Again, every week, if you follow us on YouTube, I will definitely give you a shout out at the start of the podcast. So like I said, I had a ton of response. Most of it was positive feedback, so I appreciate that. There was constructive criticism, which I am looking for. And moving forward, I will be using that to make this experience and make the show and make my presentation better for everybody to enjoy. So the number one question that I did get, however, is what's with the name? And it's kind of a two-sided story. So the first reason is the six-sided ring is going to be synonymous with Impact, even if they never use it again. All of their past matches on the GWN for the last 15 years, or save for that 2010 era when they brought back a four-sided ring, all those great matches all involve the six-sided ring. Or if they bring back talent, they're going to run vignettes for them. They're going to be showing matches of them in the six-sided ring. So any way you slice it, the six-sided ring is still going to be synonymous with Impact Wrestling. So that's why I chose the name. Second part of that is, I personally was never a big fan of the six-sided ring. So the name itself is also kind of a rib on me. And if you know me, then you understand why I would think that's funny. So that's what's gone into the name. Now I'll move into the most positively reviewed part of last week, which I will be continuing every week, and that's my 4 thoughts pertaining to Impact. This week's a little bit different. The first 3 directly pertain to Impact, and the 4th one is kind of the whole wrestling genre in general. But when I get there, you'll understand what I mean. So the first thing that I would like to see at Impact is managers coming back. I really feel like there's some great talent in the ring. They're not as great promoting themselves outside of the ring. And case in point was last week, the Caleb Conley and Trevor Lee promo. You couldn't call it that because it was really unintelligible. If you remember a few months ago, Trevor Lee had Shane Helms, and man, Shane Helms did a hell of a job, promoting him, getting him over, really establishing him as a big-time player in Impact. So I would like to see moving forward talents that need a little bit of help on the mic. That's not a criticism. Some people are great on the mic, not so great in the ring, and vice versa. Just it's that extra element to really make that person seem special. And again, if you're trying to really get people over, I think this is a great way to go. You look through history, there's always been great talents that have had a great manager. And maybe they've outgrown them, maybe they've stuck with them the whole way. You have the obvious ones, Bobby Heenan. How many guys did he manage and get over? You had Paul Bearer, right? For years it was Undertaker, then it was Kane, Mankind. Even in the most recent years, Paul Heyman, look what he's done for Brock Lesnar's career. And a guy that I want to mention, because I'm not sure who would all be familiar with him, is Truth Martini when he was actually managing in Ring of Honor, when he was paired with both Jay Lethal and Matt Taven at different times. He did a lot to get those guys over. And then you get to a point where, they can outgrow that manager, and then boom, instant angle. So that's something I would like to see going forward. Not everybody needs one. They don't need 100. But the special talents, and I'm talking about the really talented ones in the ring, that need a little bit of help on the mic, I think that's a great way to go. So my second thought is them going back to the vignettes for incoming talent, I think is a really good way to showcase everything. First off, it's showcasing that they are different from the other companies because nobody does the vignettes anymore. And legitimately, these Brian Cage vignettes that we've been seeing, those are money. That's showing immediately that this guy is somebody to be reckoned with in wrestling. And when he makes his debut, people are going to know who he is. They're already going to be looking up his stuff on YouTube. They're going to be checking him out on Twitter. They're going to see what a monster this guy is. And if he comes in and just starts cleaning house, that's awesome. And that's because of well done vignettes. So kudos to Impact for doing that. My third thought is keeping matches in the ring. You don't see it enough nowadays. Almost every match, especially last week, but you could go any episode of almost every promotion. I would say that 90% of the matches go outside the ring or have some sort of interference from outside the ring, or they have a big blowout outside the ring. To me, it would mean more for a match to be contained in the ring, right? No weapons, you're not using the guardrails or the steel stairs or whatever, but two guys having a quality match inside the ring, to me, would stand out way more than a lot of the diving outside the ring and a lot of the we'll just use for an example a suplex on the stairs or whatever, because it's been so overplayed that the audience is now just kind of desensitized to it, and you don't get the same reaction that you do if you could do a high quality match in the ring. To me, it would make more sense and it would mean more. And my fourth thought here, like I said, this one doesn't necessarily pertain only to Impact, but wrestling in general is, and pardon my language here because I am going to get hot in this one, but these shit dirt sheet writers. I'm not talking about the quality ones, for example, Dave Meltzer. I'm talking about the ones who continually make up stories, who continually put down promotions, and who continually essentially spread bullshit throughout social media and on the internet. All it does is reinforce people's negative feelings on certain companies. Now, part of it, I swear, is that they're trying to get themselves a job with a big company, and I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. So you'll see one company get positive, glowing reviews, even though the product is not good or the shows were not good. And you'll get a company that does a killer show and gets buried by some of these writers who A, never even watched the show, so they don't know what they're talking about, or B, have a vendetta against that company and just write some terrible article slandering them just because they're either trying to get themselves over at the other promotion's talent, at the other promotion's expense, I should say, or, like I said, they're trying to position themselves to get a job with somebody else, like, oh, look at this article I wrote exposing insert company here. Usually lately it's been Impact Wrestling. So you'll see ridiculous articles like the new owners of Impact are missing payments, which is not true. That they're going to be selling the company, which again is not true. They'll talk about all the stars that are leaving, but they never say a damn word about who's coming in. And honestly, they've had bigger, I'm not knocking anybody, but they're having bigger talent coming in, honestly, than they've been losing. But you'll never hear that in the sheets. As well, they just did the Brace for Impact combined show with WrestlePro, which sold out, and it was a hot crowd, and it was a hell of a show. But obviously, you're not going to read about that in any of the sheets because they don't want to show that. They don't want to talk about the steps that Impact has taken to improve, and they don't want to put the company over. It's the same thing if you remember a few months ago when everybody was up in arms that Sinclair Broadcasting was gonna sell Ring of Honor to WWE, which was a sham. And then what do? Ring of Honor has their best year ever in terms of rating, in terms of marketing, in terms of promotion, in terms of ticket sales, every metric you can measure. They blew up huge last year, and they're on the rise. And I really think that with the way Impact is going and all the buzz with it, especially with their collaboration out with Twitch, man, they could really take off this year. I would just wish that there would be honest reporting from all corners of the wrestling world. That's why I put over a guy like Andre Corbeil last week. That's why from now on, you're going to hear me at the end of every episode putting over a company or a person in the wrestling community that deserves it. That's why, if I had one wish in 2018, it's that all these nonsense spewing, bullshit writing, rumor spreading, and otherwise TMZ-like dirt sheet writers, I would love nothing more than for them to do one thing. And I'm going to quote Jim Cornette on this one. Get out of the wrestling world. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye. Well, now that I've broken my own rule about opening the show with a monologue, whew, my goodness. We can get into actually reviewing this week's episode of Impact Wrestling. So we have the show open with a recap of last week's altercation between Austin Aries and Eli Drake. All the big kerfluffle there with Austin Aries ending up winning the title. And then, again, truly fantastic. We start a wrestling show off with a wrestling match. And this one was a tag team match. We had Ishimori and Matt Sydal versus Phantasma and Rohit Raju. I want to point out at first, they gave huge props to Phantasma for being the AAA Latin American champion. And they really put over Matt Sydal with the Grand Championship. However, I thought it was odd that they didn't really talk about Ishimori being the X Division champ. And you could see, even with the way that the intros were filmed, you had, Matt Sydal, they really showcased the belt, right? They had Phantasma really showcasing the AAA title, and they didn't really showcase the X Division title. I just thought it was an odd way to have the intros done. So I thought that this was a great opening match. Four extremely talented guys, and I'm a huge fan of Ishimori, so honestly, anytime to see him work is really a treating. So a good start of the opening of the match was done in the ring with a lot of great mat wrestling, and I thought that was a really smart way to go. These four guys are high flyers. You know that they're all going to do something crazy. What I like is that they didn't open with that. They built to these spots. They built to spilling onto the outside. In a tag match, this instance, I liked going on the outside, and it made sense. And I also will say I liked how the commentators, by the way, for this match, it was Josh Matthews and Sanjay Dutt, did a really good job of putting over the fact that Phantasma does some killer suicide dive, and he doesn't do it this match. So now, instead of giving the fans something like that all the time, you're saving it for when it's special. You're making it mean something so that when you do see him hit it, man, it's going to blow the roof off that place. Another thing in this match I noticed is it wasn't your standard match that had a heel and baby face. So there was a couple of huge spots on this one that were really, really well done. You had Ishimori doing a huge moonsault off the second rope to the outside of the ring. It looked so good. And then you had Sydal and Ishimori hitting the kicks to Raju, and then you had Phantasma basically kicking the shit out of Matt Sydal's face to break up the pin afterwards. So I thought those were just incredible spots. We ended up having Matt Sydal win the match, again with his beautiful shooting star press, and the way he hits it and the way he sells it after by grabbing his ribs, it looks like that move is so devastating that he's willing to put his body on the line just to win the match. So kudos to him. I thought all four guys were great in the ring, and again, this was a really, really solid match to open the show up this week. So following that match, we had an Austin Aries interview. I guess it was tried to be filmed as a presser. A little bit odd, and this segment didn't entirely work for me. Although at the end you had the big schmoz with Eli Drake and Chris Adonis coming out, and we find out that next week there's going to be a title match between Austin Aries and Eli Drake. Up next, we have another tag team match. We have the Cult Elite, that's Trevor Lee and Caleb Conley, versus, I think their name is Tech, and I totally missed the actual wrestlers' names. See, I didn't really like this match, and the reason is, if you're going to bring in jobbers, which essentially is what this Tech team is, then why do they get so much offense in on the Cult of Lee? That part of it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Yeah, I didn't get how they got so much offense, and I didn't get how they didn't make Trevor Lee look like a superstar. They didn't really have him do anything vicious or crazy. He was mocking LAX the whole time. I would have rather see him and Caleb Conley have a serious match where they beat the hell out of these guys to establish that they're big-time players against LAX, rather than all the goofy stuff in the ring. So naturally, Trevor Lee and Caleb Conley win the match by hitting the spike pile driver to win the match. Afterwards, you had LAX appearing on the screen, Conan cutting a promo and warning them essentially not to be messing with LAX. So again, not the best match to showcase the Cult of Lee. If you're going to position them to be actual threats to LAX, then position them to be actual threats to LAX. Have them beat the shit out of some other tag team. Or like really get over. Not this, goofy whatever that was in the ring. So I wasn't thrilled with that one, at least. So following that match, we had a short promo or a short backstage segment with Kiera Hogan and Ali, and then we had the match that they discussed last week, the Knockout Champions match with Laurel Van Ness versus Kiera Hogan. And again, it seems to be a theme, and this is going back before the new regime took over. It seems like whenever there's a Knockouts match, they don't talk about the action in the ring. They're talking about Twitter, and they're talking about things not even pertaining to the match and people not pertaining to the match. I just don't like how they seem to lose complete interest in the Knockouts matches every time they're in the ring, which again, your announcing team should be putting over the action and should be putting over your announcing team should be putting over the action in the ring and should be putting over the talent in the ring. And when they're rambling on about other nonsensical things that have nothing to do with the match, that helps nobody. And it seems to be especially prevalent in the knockout division matches. So I really hope that they address this going forward, because it's starting to be a trend. And you don't want your on-screen talent being belittled by guys doing voiceover in a soundstage somewhere. So that being said, I wasn't a huge fan of this match. It almost seemed like a bit of a carbon copy of last week. Laurel Von Ness carries most of the offense. Kiera Hogan gets a couple of decent moves in. I actually like her super kick when Laurel Von Ness is kneeling down. But anyways, so we have Laurel Van Ness hitting the Unprettier to retain the Knockouts title. And then we have her beating down Kiera Hogan after the match is done. And we have Ali run down to break it up. She hits a code breaker on Laurel Van Ness and sends her up retreating to the backstage area. And the shot ends with Ali holding up the championship belt, standing strong in the middle of the ring. Again, I thought that this match wasn't great, kind of like their match last week. It almost felt like the same match, if you will. I don't know if it was the way it was booked, if they're just not familiar with each other, but there didn't seem to be a lot of chemistry to me. I think both women are tremendously talented. I just didn't think it translated in this match, at least. So up next, we had a kind of an odd vignette or an odd video that pertains to what happened last week, and that is OVE. Basically, it looks like they're stalking Lashley in the parking lot. So last week, they had talked about having bigger fish to fry. I suppose that this is the biggest fish that they could possibly fry in the company. So we'll see where that goes moving forward here. After which we had another Brian Cage vignette, and I guess next week he's making his debut. And like I said in the show intro, man, they are making this guy look like a monster. So I would love if he comes in and just runs roughshod. Preferably not on established talent. I wouldn't mind seeing them feed him a few episodes of Jobbers. Just, like, I'm talking murder them in 30 seconds or less, just to really get over to the fans that may not know who he is, just how insane and just how good this guy really is. After which we had another backstage segment with EC3 doing another subpar interview. Again, I'm not trying to pick on him because I wasn't really favorable of him last week, but again, I'm assuming this is after he gave his notice, so you could just tell he doesn't have the same fire that he did previous. So again, this was a little bit of a miss for me. Especially at the end, I don't know what that was, where he goes off mumbling something incoherently. I missed it. Maybe somebody else caught it. If you did and you know what he said, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, this one just didn't really work for me. So afterwards, we had another backstage segment. This was another Jimmy Jacobs promo. This was a hell of a segment, I thought. You had Congo Kong in the background. He looks mean. You had Jimmy Jacobs. The way that he enunciates, the way that he does kind of that double speak. He says the line, I don't want to repeat myself, but he does it, like he repeats himself preceding that line. Just the way that he carries himself, the confidence he has, the way that he changes his tone, changes his pitch is incredible. So that makes me definitely want to see Congo Kong and Abyss, if they can pull Abyss out of Joseph Park. Jimmy Jacobs is selling me on that match. Maybe that was a match I wouldn't have minded seeing before. Now it's almost a must-see match for me, and that's just by the work of Jimmy Jacobs. The guy is incredible. You want to talk about a manager talent? Like I said in the intro, Jimmy Jacobs is money right now. Next up, we had another shot from the OVE camera, and this time they actually attack Bobby Lashley and stuff him in the trunk of a car and close it off with a tight shot of the three of them and Sami Callihan instructing the thumbs up, thumbs down. And I thought that this was pretty powerful. It doesn't matter if there's 3 or 4 or 5 guys, it's still Bobby Lashley, and he is a beast. And the fact that they were able to do that to him, I have no idea where this is going, but I'm real excited to find out. The next match that we had up was Hanaya versus Amber Moon. Again, you had the coming back from commercial break, Hanaya getting the intro, and Amber Nova was already in the ring, so you kind of can tell just from that the way that the match is going to go, which is essentially the way it went. In the early going, there was just complete domination by Hanaya, and again, unfortunately, the ringside announcers couldn't seem to be focused enough on this match to actually call what was happening in the match until it really started picking up steam. In the last half, you had Amber Nova making a comeback. She was fired up when she drove Hanaya headfirst into the top turnbuckle. Man, that was a hell of a spot. But it was all for naught. Amber Nova goes for the Hurricane Rana, and Hanaya powerbombs the hell out of her. Like, it didn't look like she took care of her at all. Ooh, it was stiff. And gets the 1-2-3 for the win. After the match, you see Rosemary come out of the crowd and just start brutalizing Hanaya. She's choking her out. She's throwing fists. It looked good. It looked just deadly. Rosemary set Hanaya up for the Red Wedding, and Hanaya was able to wiggle her way out and slide out of the ring. So just like last week, I'm going to say it again, the crowd was dead. For all the matches previous to this, Rosemary by far got the biggest pop of the night. So again, not saying much because that crowd is brutal itself, but it just shows how over Rosemary is, that at least she could get the crowd to be chanting. So that was really nice to see. And I'm looking forward to if they have a match. I don't know if they do because I know that Hanaya was released. I'm not sure if it was during tapings or just after. So hopefully we get a match out of those two. If not, oh man, then we're missing out for sure. It's a fatal 4-way match for the number 1 contender spot for the Global Championship. It's EC3 versus Moose versus El Patron and versus Impact. Try saying that all in one breath. My goodness. So we get the ring of the bell, and this match immediately just turns into chaos outside the ring. Normally, I'm not a fan of the 4-way matches. Usually, they're quite convoluted. I thought this one was actually really well done. There wasn't a lot of spots where 2 guys were working and 2 guys were working to the complete opposite rings, so you never get to see it all on camera. So there's a lot of 2-on-1 action. You especially saw Patron and EC3, they're teaming up on Moose. Then they're teaming up on Impact. Then they're back to teaming up on Moose. So it makes sense that you only need the camera to focus on 3 guys, and the other one just sells on the outside. Again, it works a lot better for the camera shot, and it gives the fan an overall better perception and view of the match itself. Ends up spilling way over the guardrails into the crowd. You see Moose getting really worked over and selling his knee, and eventually you see some medical staff coming to check on him. He's really selling the injury. We had a fun spot where Johnny Impact is using somebody's crutches and just beating the hell out of EC3 and Patron with the crutches. And then the tables get turned and Patron dumps Impact into a recycling bin. I thought it was just funny. And then later on, shortly after, Impact throws the recycle bin, knocking out both Patron and EC3. So I thought that was just a really fun spot in the crowd. Eventually, we get back into the ring. You see Moose hobble back in, and he is really selling his knee. And I thought he did a great job. Every time he took a step or tried to run or tried to execute any of his moves, you could tell that that knee was just shredded. He did a masterful job of selling that one. In the ring, I thought is where the match really got some steam. All four guys looked really good. They all got their shit in. Nobody kicked out of a finisher, which is nice. There's always a reason why the count got broken up, or the guy never went for a pin or whatever. So protecting finishers, always a big plus in my book. And Impact wins the match by rolling up EC3 in a really creative finish, like a really creative roll-up. I don't think I've seen that before, actually. The finish was really well done. Like I said, all four guys put on a hell of a show, and the match itself, for being a four-way match, was I can't say enough. It was really well done. I was really invested. Even the commentary on this one was pretty good, so there's nothing that really took me out of the match. So I would say that match was definitely better than the tag team match that these four gentlemen had last week. So kudos to them. They all busted their ass. Impact is your number one contender. And we look forward to next week when Eli Drake gets his rematch with Aries. And then naturally Impact, I'm assuming the week after, would have his match with the winner of that. I gotta say, all in all, this show was markedly better than last week. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't think that there was really a bad match on the card, except for that Laurel Van Ness and Kiera Hogan match, which, again, wasn't bad. It just, for me, wasn't booked properly. Now, if they can keep action like this moving forward, they're going to have a ton of momentum, and I hope that this reflects in the viewership. That's something I'm thinking I'm going to start doing next week, is just going over numbers, but we'll see. I don't really want this to turn into an hour-long podcast. So we'll see if I end up going that route or not. But like I said, real good match. Again, the crowd was not very good. I would love to see them sweeten the crowd in post-production, but that's about my only real critique about this show. So before we get out here tonight for the Six-Sided Podcast, there's just a couple of things I'd like to touch on. A couple are the same as last week. So if you want to be in contact with the show, if you want to be a part of the show, or if you want to be on the show itself, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can email me at sixsidepod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @6_podcast, and drop us a line. I've been loving the feedback that I've had with everybody since our last episode dropped last week. It's been a ton of fun, and it's funny to see how my ideas are the same as some other people's ideas, how they're different, where the difference is. So I've had a lot of fun with it anyway. So those are the two ways that you can drop us a line. If you've checked us out on YouTube or SoundCloud, I'll give you the alternate options for each. So you can find us on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/sixsidedpodcast. And then you can find us on YouTube as well by throwing it in the YouTube search bar. Six-Sided Podcast will bring up our channel and both of these episodes. And also, if you have a YouTube channel yourself, or you have Twitter, I highly suggest that you subscribe or follow us on both medias. That'd be truly awesome. And also, before I get out of here, I just want to give a quick shout out to the team at CWE Canada. They're going on a Western Canada tour. They actually just did one in the early winter this year, which set records for them for attendance. So I'm hoping that they go out there and smash those records even. So if you want to, you can check them out on Twitter at CWE Canada. You can see all the tour dates that they have posted at cwecanada.com. Again, they have a tremendous roster of talent. They always put on a good show. Like I said, last time they broke records on the tour. I hope they smash every single one of those records this time going out. So also, as a part of that, I just want to give a special shout out to Hotshot Danny Duggan. He was supposed to have surgery for an injury that he sustained on that tour last time. He had to come back. He didn't need the surgery, so he should be good to go to get out there again and wrestle in front of everybody. And if you haven't seen this guy work, you are missing out. He is one of the very best. He always puts on a tremendous match. Just a great showman and a great promo and a super nice guy. So you can follow him specifically on Twitter at HotshotDannyD. So again, CWECanada.com, at CWECanada on Twitter, and again at HotshotDannyD again on Twitter. So all that being what it is, before I leave for tonight, I just want to say, make an impact in somebody else's life. If you can help somebody else catch fire, you're going to catch fire yourself, and we can all make this world a better place. Take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, everyone.